In some sense, talk of the JCPOA is almost peripheral now. The provisions of that, many of them have already expired.
Mhm.
And if my understanding is correct, they were prepared to shorten the length of some of the others as well. So they had said, Robert Malley, Wendy Sherman, the gang had all said, we're going to do longer, stronger, better, when in fact they ended up negotiating for shorter, weaker, worse. And now they can't get that deal done. It's most unfortunate.
What do
We
you
know who
say?
the Iranian regime is.
Mhm.
These are evil theocrats intent on the destruction of the nation of Israel and the United States of America. We ought not to be negotiating to figure out how much money to give them in exchange for an ephemeral promise for just a moment, to slow down their enrichment and weapons program. We know they lied about the history of that program
Mhm.
the first time. Right. We know that. We know they lied the first time. Why we would negotiate with someone who has lied about their nuclear program is absolutely beyond me.
Mhm. How do you perceive the resolution adopted by the IAEA calling Iran to fulfill its NPT obligation? Is it sufficient?
It's good. Should have done it months and months and months ago. They have been in violation of the NPT for an awfully long time.
Mhm.
The question isn't what resolution someone will sign at a cocktail party. It's what is the enforcement mechanism that one is prepared to use in order to ensure that Iran comes back into compliance with the NPT. And your point's a very good one. I don't think I made this earlier. This isn't about the JCPOA.
Mhm.
Everybody confused that. And I understand normal people who don't spend their life in this. This is about the NPT, an agreement that the Iranians have agreed to comply with, and which the United States has not withdrawn from, right? They used the withdrawal from the JCPOA as an excuse.
Mhm.
The NPT is still in good standing. The Iranians are in violations. The IAEA resolution now recognizes that.
Mhm.
The fact that the Russians and Chinese refused to sign on to that is very telling about the direction of the Iranian weapons program.
Mhm. So what do you suggest? CNN has reported earlier today that the Biden administration are exploring the Plan B, some military maybe alternative to push Iran to execute its obligation. Do you think it's feasible that Biden would go there?
I don't want to say much about this.
Mhm.
I'll leave it with the simple. I was the CIA director and then Secretary of State. It's just best that I not comment on the military component of this. But it is a fair statement that American leadership, American military capacity, and that of our friends and allies and partners in the region have as a no BS requirement to ensure that there is not a nuclear weapon in the hands of the Ayatollah Khamenei. It's too risky to permit that to happen, and we should take every action necessary to ensure that that does not take place.
If you were in office, what do you do in this situation now that Iran is close to the threshold?
Yeah, first thing you do is to stop giving them money.
Mm-hmm.
They still have work to do. They still have to pay people. They're still paying Hezbollah. They're still paying Hamas. They're still engaged in terror all across the world. You can deny them resources. They've got to conduct studies. They've still got to test missiles. They still have to build out the weapons program. They still have to continue to repair enrichment at both Natanz and Fordow. I can assure you of this. Every dollar that goes to the Iranian regime hastens the moment when they will not only have sufficient fissile material for a weapon, but the capacity to deliver one.
But is it sufficient to stop them from going further with their nuclear program? I mean, the maximum pressure didn't stop them or hamper their ambition.
Oh, that's not true. That's not true. Mm-hmm. Don't use the talking points from the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use Robert Malley's talking points.
Mm-hmm.
It absolutely denied them the capacity to continue to improve their understanding of how one would build out such a system.
Mm-hmm.
And we were, in fact, on the cusp of an enormous success. Iran had gone from $96 billion in foreign exchange reserves to $4 billion. And the sanctions campaign had been in place only for a matter of months. You'll recall we didn't withdraw from the JCPOA until we were already nearly 2 years into the administration. We placed the maximum sanctions at about the 2-year mark. We granted waivers and wind down periods for a significantly longer time. So the sanctions themselves were only in place for about 17 months. $96 billion in foreign exchange reserves to $4 billion. The Iranian regime was on a trajectory to have to make a very, very difficult set of decisions.
But now, do we still have the time to get those sanctions, get the effect necessary to hamper their ambitions now, at these days?
I don't know the answer to that. Mm-hmm. What I know is that we don't have an administration in America that's prepared to find out the answer to that, to actually do it. Mm-hmm. The first step has to be to not only impose the sanctions, but do what we did for those final 18 months, vigorously enforce them everywhere and always against the Chinese Communist Party, against the Russians, against everyone who is trying to transship this product and evade sanctions. If you put the sanctions in place and you enforce them rigorously, you can immediately put Iran in a very difficult place. Their GDP in Iran may well grow faster than ours in the United States this year.
Wow.
And by the way, yours in the Middle East and yours in Europe as well. We unleashed the economic hounds of hell in Iran.
Okay. You once wrote that Biden administration absurd policy towards Iran and the Gulf region endangers the security of the United States. But you have witnessed any change in his policy lately?
I haven't seen them take actual steps that build out relationships with our partners in the region. The Abraham Accords were part of it. The work that we did to make sure that the nations in the region had Patriot missile batteries and weapon systems, America's forward footprint in Al Udeid and the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. These were all elements of creating stability in the region. And I've not seen this administration continue to reinforce those in a way that I think is meaningful and sends messages both to our adversary in Iran and our friends more broadly, our Israeli friends, Saudi friends, our Emirati friends, that the United States is prepared to help them secure their nations.
Your Excellency, you were a supporter of the decision of taking Qasem Soleimani down. When can you tell us about the circumstances behind this decision, despite all the warnings in Washington back at the day?
Yes, much like the warnings that said if one withdraw from the JCPOA, there will be war. Mm-hmm. And much like the warnings that said if the United States moves its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, there will be war. There were warnings that said if you strike at General Soleimani, there will be war. Well, we didn't just do one of those or two of those. We did each of those three things, and there was no war. Mm-hmm. It was because America was demonstrably prepared to protect the things that matter to the American people. General Soleimani was engaged in a plot to kill another 500 Americans. We had the opportunity to take down that plot, and we did.
Mm-hmm. It was a fast decision, or it took you some time to agree on it?
I don't talk about internal deliberations much, but we had been working to protect our assets in Iraq, our people in Syria, and in fact, Americans all across the world for an awfully long time. We had been watching what the Quds Force was up to. And so in that sense, it was a project that we had been engaged in continuously. Mm-hmm. And then we had this opportunity to stop what was a imminent attack on U.S. resources, U.S. assets, U.S. people. And the president made the decision to do just that.
In this context, you have been subjected to threats from Iran. What can you tell us about that? How did you find out?
Twitter.
Really?
I mean, I'm being a little facetious. No, it's very clear that the Iranians have, and it is their pattern and practice around the world to conduct terror campaigns, to try to convince the next set of leaders, right? This isn't directly aimed at me. This is directed at the next set of leaders. Do not behave like Mike Pompeo did. Be nice. Be nice to us. Go easy on us. Allow us to continue to build our nuclear program, and we won't threaten your life. That's the message that the Ayatollah and Soleimani's successor and Raisi are all sending to the world. They're sending to every world leader. Be very careful how you deal with us, or we will come kill you.
Did you
This
see?
is precisely the reason. This is precisely the reason
Yes, of
that
course.
you have to deny them the resources to be coercive and extortive and to strike fear across the world.
Did you see the video about you threatening you by a drone? Did you see that on Twitter?
Yes, I have seen it.
Okay. Let's move to Ukraine. Your Excellency, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. What's your assessment of the course of the war? Where's it heading?
Sadly, I think what we're seeing today in Ukraine is likely to continue for some period of time. It is absolutely tragic, beyond heartbreaking to watch innocent Ukrainians being killed. There are no military objectives in many of these places that Vladimir Putin has attacked, but rather he is seeking to terrorize the people so that they will give up their own political sovereignty. I don't think Vladimir Putin has any intention of changing his views. He has wanted to restore what he calls, quote, greater Russia, end of quote, since he's been an adult. Was certainly on our watch as well. He sought to do that. But when America was weak, when America failed to lead, he believed, his perception was at least, that he could attack Ukraine, take down the political leadership there. It's proven more difficult than he anticipated. I'm heartened by that, but this is going to be a continuing challenge. Vladimir Putin isn't going away, in the sense of it is he and those around him too, who are desirous, who believe Ukraine is rightfully part of Russia and have every intention of retaking it through kinetic action.
So you think it will take some time to end this war? It won't be...
I see no reason to think that Vladimir Putin is looking for an off-ramp. If he should pause, if there should be a ceasefire, it will only be to regroup, rearm.
Okay. Many media outlets confirmed that you will run for the U.S. presidential election if Trump does not run for office. What's your decisive response on that?
We have big elections here in November of this year. I am working to help people from my political party be successful. And then in December of this year and January of next, my wife Susan and I will pray and think and decide whether or not we're going to run for president of the United States.
Let's move to a quick question now. Your weight loss drew the attention of the international media. How did you manage to do it? Was it surgical, long hours at gym, or fear of Iran, as some Iranian media outlets mentioned?
It was old-fashioned way. I stopped eating things that I like bread and pasta and rice and all the good Middle Eastern treats, and started working out more. It was that either that simple or that hard.
Okay. Some say that the reason behind your weight gain was your proximity to President Trump, who's known for his love of fast food. Was it appetite contagious?
No, not at all. This is Mike Pompeo's challenge, not anyone else's. I love good fast food. I love sweets. I was ill-disciplined, and I now have it a little bit back in a better place. I feel much healthier today. I'm happy about it.
Okay. You said you miss every moment of your work at the State Department. What do you miss the most?
I miss engaging with both the team there, trying to solve problems, make life better, more secure, more prosperous for people back home. But I also got to meet amazing people all across the world, certainly remarkable world leaders, but even just people living their lives in places across the world. It was always so real, so gritty, so tangible to me to get a chance to see someone living in difficult conditions in a country and know that if America got it right, we might well make their life just a little bit better off. I miss the chance to do that.
And we miss you too. Which social media platform do you use the most? We've seen you in Instagram aspects of your private life. Do you manage your account personally?
I do. Everything that's there, sadly, I own. So for good and for bad, I have help doing it, but I see the things that go up, and so I'm very involved in both my Twitter account and the Instagram account as well.
You managed to lead a normal life despite all the threats and your tight schedule. You see that?
I try to. My wife, my son, we try to live a normal life.
What's your hobby nowadays?
I'm sorry?
What's your hobby nowadays?
Oh, goodness. I still don't really have much of a hobby. I've always loved to read. So when I have spare time, I'll always pick up something good to read. Nonfiction, histories, biographies. I don't read so much about current events these days. I'm more interested in making sure I understand the past so that I can form good judgments at the future. Yes.
Okay. My last question: will the Jan 6 hearing hamper Trump's ambition to re-enter the election marathon? Do you think?
You know, I didn't see the presentation from that night. I've seen some of the summaries and talk about it. I don't know. I think many Americans have already made up their minds about what happened on January 6th. My view is for those who committed crimes that day, they should be prosecuted. But there were many that were there that day that just came to be on our Washington Mall to pray and to speak their mind. They have every right to do that. We finished that night. It was a tough scene there at the Capitol that day, but we finished. We actually delivered the votes that evening. We brought Congress back into session. We finished it out. We did it in the way that was comported with our Constitution, and I think this actually shows the strength of our nation on a day that was very challenging.
But some would accuse Trump of attempting a coup. Do you agree with that?
Oh, goodness. Some have accused me and others of being, and President Trump himself, of being Russian assets. I always think we should do facts and data and science. And as the facts unfold, as the data becomes clear, we'll begin to learn the things that matter most. I'm focused on making sure we do well in November 22. I am also deeply focused on getting facts and science out about the Wuhan virus that killed millions of people all across the world. These are the things that people across the world should be focused on. The things that can help their children and their grandchildren be more successful.